Viewers sometimes tell me that they don't like taking puzzles to the beach because they get sand in their puzzles. This is a puzzle that turns exactly the same with or without sand inside it. This is the Crazy Split 1x2x3, a puzzle I found on Thingiverse and 3D printed for myself. Links in the description, of course. Looking at it, it's actually a bit confusing as to what this actually is. It has 1x2x3 in its name, and yet it's significantly larger than a standard 2x2x3. I want to say that mechanically, no section of this puzzle actually comprises exclusively a 1x2x3. This circle on the inside is identical to a split 1x2x3, where the corners are split in half and the centers aren't. You can't actually tell just by looking at the Crazy Split 1x2x3 that this is how the central circle is laid out. So unless you build this for yourself, you'd actually only be able to find out from making turns and then wondering why you can't split apart this from this or this from this, whereas these two are discrete pieces from these two. And then on the outside of this split 1x2x3, you have kind of a ring of a split 3x3x2, where all of this around the puzzle is identical. These two are the same as these two, this is the same as this, even though it looks asymmetrical because on this axis you cut everything in half, and on this axis you cut everything in thirds. Everything on the outer ring is the exact same. But it's not a fully functional split 3x3x2, as you'll quickly find out when you turn this 90 degrees and then you can't make this turn. This is because, as I said earlier, this isn't a 2x2x3 on the inside, it's a split 1x2x3. So the only split in half type turn you could make is this one. This is definitely a very unique puzzle overall. Now, let's take a look at how I built it. Here are the parts from the original Thingiverse post, all easy to print without supports. There's also 2 rods and a core I printed from someone's remix, since the original puzzle required Lego axles along with an M4 screw and nut glued together, neither of which I was interested in obtaining, and clearly someone else had that thought before me. Personally, I believe that screwless mechanisms are usually inferior to ones attached by a screw, and this puzzle is a prime example of why. It would have been so much simpler to assemble if you could just have the 2 circle centers screw into each other, instead of being attached by rods and a core of some sort. In my case, the rods didn't actually fit all the way into the puzzle, and they were too tight to separate the centers back out. I tried salvaging the centers by gluing them together, but this of course didn't work. So I printed a new set of centers and rod for one side, this time cutting the rod so it fit in its entirety. This puzzle's mechanism could have genuinely been super simple. This entire setup is unnecessary and just frustrating. After finally assembling the Crazy Split 1x2x3, I started breaking it in. It was at this point that I started realizing just how poorly this puzzle was going to turn. None of the sharp edges seemed to have fillets, meaning there was zero corner cutting, and everything had to be lined up pretty much perfectly to make a turn. On top of that, the circle turn was so tight that it was really difficult to break in, even with a lot of lube in the puzzle. Whenever designing a puzzle with an inset circle that the user can turn, the issue is that you have to find a balance in clearances where it's loose enough that you can turn it with reasonable ease, but yet still feel satisfying to turn. That's a consideration I had to make, for example, in my floppy Super Square 4 design. I don't think this crazy split 1x2x3 does a really good job of finding that balance. Even after fully breaking it in, the circle was just way too tight. I honestly think this puzzle would have been a much better experience if the circle was maybe a little smaller and also somehow extended past the cuboid limits of the puzzle so that you could actually grip it separately other than just by the face. What also doesn't help is because the mechanism of the crazy split 1x2x3 is completely screwless, there's no way of tensioning it whatsoever. Whatever happens when you assemble it is just what you get. There's no way of making it looser, tighter, without going back and changing the design itself, which is a pretty big flaw of screwless designs in general. But before I get too negative about the design, I do want to say that the crazy split 1x2x3 is one of the designer's earlier puzzles, and he has definitely improved since then, so no hard feelings against the designer. It's still free files after all, and I chose to print them. If you're a newer designer, I hope you can understand this constructive criticism and maybe avoid making similar mistakes in your own designs. Regardless, I moved on to stickering. There was no DXF provided, just an STL of a template to cut stickers by hand. Since I was going away for a bit, I decided to bring this template and some scrap vinyl with me, hoping to maybe find some redemption in hand-cutting stickers, which I generally avoid at all costs. I set up a small table with a sharp X-Acto knife, some scrap vinyl with roughly enough unused material for this specific puzzle, and the 3D printed sticker template from Thingiverse, and a chair. Then I cut stickers for a while using the template and tried putting some of them on the puzzle. The stickers might not look awful on camera, but in person they were clearly uneven and I wasn't satisfied with the results. I believe this type of template is not optimal for hand cutting stickers, but rather than trying to optimize hand cutting, I simply took the puzzle back home and cut the stickers the correct way, using my vinyl cutter. Unfortunately, as you may remember I mentioned earlier, the files for the crazy split 1x2x3 on Thingiverse did not include a DXF sticker template, and it wasn't designed in Onshape or SolidWorks, so I couldn't easily generate a template from the existing files. So I took out my calipers and measured all the different parts of the puzzle, and then modeled it in a new Onshape document. The circle diameter was probably the most annoying measurement to get right, but overall this was a fairly straightforward process. I've had to do this in the past for Oscar's Das Cube 2, since his sticker template didn't work, but the Das Cube 2 was actually much easier to measure than the crazy split 1x2x3, so I'd say it took a fair bit longer this time around. After the main sketch of the puzzle with the accurate measurements was complete, it was simply a matter of slicing the puzzle up using several planes and surfaces that are generated based on my measurements. Once the model of the puzzle was done, I filleted the part's edges and then extruded solids from the faces. I then further filleted the edges of these extrusions and imported the combined faces into sketches, the sketches forming the sticker templates. When all of the templates were complete, I exported them as DXF files and imported them into Silhouette Studio and cut them out on my vinyl cutter. You may notice that the circular edges are a bit misshapen. It's either an Onshape or Silhouette Studio bug. I just haven't figured out which software is at fault yet. I will say that I actually didn't double check my model when compared to the real puzzle, and it turned out that I missed some cuts, not noticing until part way through applying the stickers. However, the shapes were still correct. So, in a fairly ironic twist, I ended up hand cutting the final stickers by putting them on the puzzle as they were, and cutting out the sections that weren't above any parts. And then finally, after way too long, it was time to take the crazy split 1x2x3 outside and see how it works. Breaking in the crazy split 1x2x3 was tedious due to the circle, but after the break-in the puzzle definitely turns noticeably better. The circle turns I still wouldn't say turn well, but the rest of them are more or less acceptable, although still hampered due to the complete lack of corner cutting. This design doesn't need to turn this badly. The mechanism could be simplified and improved with some quite simple changes. I might make my own design of this sometime in the future, or maybe a shape mod, because I'm genuinely interested in solving a puzzle like this more, but it's just not worth it for me with this physical implementation. I've already solved the crazy split 1x2x3 once, and while initially I was expecting it to be a cakewalk, it actually took me quite a while. It felt like every time I solved one step I got to a new roadblock, and because the puzzle is asymmetrical, it was kind of weird to maneuver pieces around it. I don't know if I would go as far as saying this puzzle is difficult, but it's certainly very interesting, and by far is the most rewarding 1x2x3 based puzzle I've ever solved. The puzzle's pieces are relatively straightforward, but the puzzle's moveset makes maneuvering them around the puzzle really interesting, because you have to do it in ways you might not be used to. Something that definitely complicates the parodies you can get is the fact that a lot of pieces look the same, but them being switched around might have impact on the other piece's positioning. So before the sun goes down even more, let's go ahead and scramble the crazy split 1x2x3. Recall that this puzzle has some pretty weird turning restrictions. For example, this piece is actually the same as this piece, which means I can't turn this. The only vertical in this context slice that I can make is this one. With that being said, I'm still going to solve this like a glorified 2x2x3, purely by the outer corners for the time being. Alright, it has occurred to me that this isn't actually solvable purely as a 2x2x3 with regards to the outer corners. That is because you can do 90-degree turns on this axis. I believe this means I will have to upgrade my strategy of solving to a 3x3x2, which is annoying because this puzzle isn't really a 3x3x2. It has a lot of aspects of one, but it's not a fully functional 3x3x2. So, this might be a bit of a slog. Actually, I think if I ignore these central parts, it might be the same, roughly. Let's try it out. So yeah, I think I can just solve this as a 3x3x2, but using this axis as well. Well, after the most painful 3x3x2 solve I have ever had the misfortune of enduring, the outer corners are done. Now, the next step I could take could either be these outer parts here, or these inner parts here. I don't know which one I should do first, and I'm going to be honest at this time, having been right after I actually put the puzzle together, I'm not too enthusiastic about even solving this at all, so I'm going to come back to this a different day and see what I want to solve first, the outer split edges or the inner 1x2x3. Alright, it is now the next evening and I'm scheduled to go outside to film this puzzle tomorrow, so I have to finish this today. I have been thinking about it, and genuinely this is a really interesting puzzle that requires a solving strategy you normally wouldn't have come up with. So consider the fact that all of these little split edges are the same, and yet they can be manipulated by two completely different types of moves. You have the half slice, and you have the third slice, which just moves them around without splitting them apart. And on top of that, you have to put them in the correct positioning along with all of the corners, and that's while keeping the corners in the correct spots. Normally I don't think this would have been particularly difficult, but however, given this puzzle's truly abysmal turning, I suspect that this will be very challenging, mostly to just get the puzzle to do what I want. And then this bandaged 2x2x3 on the inside, because remember, these two parts are different from these two parts, but these two are actually the exact same as this. I think these will be pretty easy to manipulate without changing the outer ring of the puzzle, so I'm going to leave that for last. But for now, my tentative strategy, this might change, is to basically put these small parts next to these corners to pair them up. And then that'll leave me 8 of these that I could just manipulate otherwise. I don't know if that's entirely a great idea, but I mean, honestly, this is genuinely a very unique puzzle, so it does present new challenges. It's a shame that it's just barely usable. Alright, so at this point I have two of these edges fully paired up and paired with their respective corners. And what that means actually is if I were to turn both these by 90 degrees, normally I'd show you, but that's a painful endeavor on this puzzle, then these would kind of be protected with their respective corners and not affected by this vertical slice. I don't know if these last two are going to be as simple to do as those others were, but we'll take a look. In theory, this puzzle doesn't have that many parts, so maybe it'll actually be not too bad. Alright, so I now have all of the relevant parts paired up. I have the green-white, blue-white, blue-yellow, green-yellow. I have all of the relevant parts paired up, and I guess I can put them all on the same axis. I did unfortunately have to break up the 3x3x2 corners in this process, but I'm hoping that because of the way I paired these up, I might be able to kind of finagle everything back into position without having to mess this axis up once again. Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be possible. This puzzle's really weird. Actually, if I'm going to be solving this purely as a 3x3x2, then logic would dictate I actually position the bottom layer edges first and then the corners and then do the top layer. So I'm going to try doing that. I don't know if I'm going to get anywhere. Alright, as much as it doesn't look like it, the first layer is actually done. The most important bit is that this is all together and this is all together. Remember, this is going to be turned by 90 degrees, so these parts are all going to get split up by this half. So I'm not too concerned at the moment. You know what I bet I could do that I didn't think of? What if I just put everything that isn't solved onto this axis and then pair it up? Because as I've clearly demonstrated, I'm able to fully manipulate this as a 3x3x2. Well, at least with first layer algorithms. Maybe second layer algorithms aren't so lucky. But at least with first layer algorithms, just by positioning everything on the side that I want. So maybe I could just pair everything up and solve everything as a super scuffed 3x3x2. That would be kind of fun, honestly. I guess I'll quickly detour and try doing that. What do I even have? Oh, no one likes to see that. Yeah, so what I actually have, to my understanding, is just two half edges that are swapped. Alright, now I gotta figure out how I'm even gonna do that, because that sounds pretty bad. I utterly don't understand how I messed it up the first time, but I've tried it a second time, and yes, I've been able to set up a 4 cycle between everything, and then that means that everything is pretty much all set. So now I'm going to see if I can really solve this thing as a scuffed 3x3x2. So I'm going to, of course, once again create the first layer, and then the last layer is where I think things might get interesting. Or they might not, and I might just be able to solve this pretty easily. Let's take a look. Alright, as promised, first layer is complete. Obviously, as I explained earlier, I'm still going to solve this inner bandaged 2x2x3 a bit later. So yeah, right now I'm going to see if I can solve the second layer of the 2x2x3 without messing up these split edges. Which basically means, to put it simply, all I'm trying to do is never make this turn. I can already tell that I'm going to be able to solve this as a 3x3x2 because conceptually, this central part that determines whether or not you're making a third of a turn or half of a turn is actually completely external to this 3x3x2 that we have on the outside. Consider the fact that if I need a type of turn, I could turn the entire puzzle around this core and get that type of turn. So yeah, I am 100% going to be able to solve this outer set of parts just as a 3x3x2. That's something that never clicked for me initially, but I mean, that's part of why I make these puzzles that other people created. I find it really interesting to figure out these new concepts. New concepts not including having to redo your algorithm because this puzzle can't turn to save its own life. Alright, so the 3x3x2 is done, and I didn't even have to do any edge swaps. I mean, not that that would have mattered, because the edge swap algorithms would all work exactly the same as on a regular 3x3x2. But yeah, all that's left now is to solve this inner bandaged 2x2x3, which honestly I don't think should be that difficult, right? Because, as I just mentioned, this outer ring and this inner circle are essentially completely discrete puzzles. You can manipulate one without manipulating the other. So, let's see. Okay, that might not have been completely true. This inner puzzle is bandaged in a weird enough way that I think it might be a bit annoying to actually solve it. I'm mainly apprehensive about making this turn, but you know what? At the end of the day, this is the crazy split 1x2x3. It has 1x2x3 in the name. This can't be that bad, so I'm just gonna go for it without strategizing too much. Maybe it was a mistake to leave this inner bandage 2x2x3 till the end, because honestly manipulating it is much more difficult than I initially anticipated. As much as I hate to admit it, what I'm going to do is try and solve this, and then whatever happens to the outer 3x3x2, I'll accept the consequences of, and just resolve that. I mean, that's part of the thing about this being my first solve, right? I'm figuring out in what order I want to solve all of the aspects of the puzzle. And that's part of what makes something like this fun. So while I have the inner bandaged 2x2x3 solved, and I'm not totally certain how it's affected the outside layers, so that's something I'm going to have to figure out real quick. It's honestly a really interesting dilemma I'm having here. So, as you saw, what I did is I made myself a little 4-cycle here, but conversely I also messed up this inner bandaged 2x2x3. Could I just do that again? Yeah, I'm not totally sure what I'm going to do about this. I do have hope for this situation because in theory, right, I need an even amount of swaps. I need to swap this to this, I think, and then this to this. So yeah, I should be able to do that without upsetting the balance of these split edges. Alright, so I'm finally in a situation where I have this solved and a 4-cycle here, which in theory means I should be okay, but I have to consider the fact that these moves and these moves affect each other in pretty weird ways, honestly. Upon further inspection, it actually wasn't a 4-cycle, it was a 2-cycle. But upon further inspection, I realized this wasn't actually that bad, because the goal is essentially to set up the pedal pattern in a way that when you make your 90-degree turn, none of these colors get switched around. So let's do that right now. As much as I'm embarrassed to say it, the crazy... what is this puzzle called? Crazy split 1x2x3. This I sorely underestimated. I'm going to revisit this tomorrow morning before heading outside to film it, but I'm going to have a clearer head because, honestly, I've been fiddling with this for an absolutely absurd amount of time, as I'm sure you've seen through the time lapses. I filmed everything, well, nearly everything, and, damn. I guess this puzzle simply continues the trend of defying my expectations at every single step. Alright, so I believe I figured it out. Basically, the strategy when you're encountering the kind of situation that I was is you have to swap two identically colored pieces that are also of the same orientation. So for example, swapping these two won't help you because these are differently oriented. They're chiral. But swapping these two, these would be the same, so that would help. So in this case, I actually have a simpler situation where I have two edges that need to be swapped and two of these inner triangle pieces that need to be swapped. So what I'm going to do is align the split edge that needs to be swapped with this piece, despite the puzzle not wanting me to do that. Yes. And now, so I believe that was up top. Yes. Okay, cool. So now I should be able to just bring this up here because this is what needs to get switched, and then switch these two around, and that should solve everything, I think, in terms of pairing everything and having this inner part done. Alright, this is very epic. Everything is done with regards to reducing this to a 3x3x2. So the next step and final step is going to be to just solve this as a 3x3x2. Let me real quick just see what actually that entails. Alright, I have no idea what I did other than just flipping some parts around semi-frantically, but I am in a situation where I will solve the puzzle. Because I'm going to solve these two edges by flipping them, and then this will also flip around this layer. So, I should be good, right? If somehow my understanding is wrong and this puzzle is not solved at the end of this, I won't be mad. I will be just, I will find the situation utterly hilarious because this puzzle has been absolutely driving me insane for the past 2 days. Oh my god, finally, the crazy split, what is this called? The crazy split 1x2x3 is solved. I am never touching this again. This turns so awfully. Normally I'd release the sticker template for you guys to peruse, but as you guys can see clearly, Onshape has this weird bug where for some reason certain types of curves it can't export properly. So this is actually way more linear than it should be, which is why these inner and outer circles look so misshapen. So I'm not going to release that. However, given how really interesting the solve was and that I do want to revisit this, I'd say be on the lookout for kind of a re-inspired / reimagined version of this that I'm going to design personally. that's hopefully gonna turn acceptably. So yeah, because that was really interesting to solve, and I can't bring myself to scramble this puzzle a single other time, which I'm gonna have to do because I'm filming the demo today, so I guess I'm eating my words already. But yeah, this was just gonna be something I download off Thingiverse and then I make a video about, and it's like, oh, interesting concept, nothing too special about it. But no, this was very special. So thank you, Algorithmizer, for posting it, even though the design and the stickers, and you know what, I'm not gonna complain about something that's free. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.